So this is the second part of working with the families and the community. Last week, I kind of subtitled it the sour, and this is the sweet. So last week, we were looking at angry parents, unreasonable parents, parents that are being inappropriate in the classroom, people that you might have to call the cops on, all those types of like difficult things, because a lot of times you're tested in your leadership ability as you can navigate something more difficult. Now I want to talk a little bit about the fun part of this. So we're going to talk about starting and keeping good working relationships, because it's a difficult thing to kind of have a working relationship with parents. How do you involve parents in your program? Some people want that. Most of the generations as we're changing are looking for more involvement in our families, and we know that the more we can get families involved in child education, there's better educational outcomes for children. And then also marketing your program as well. I actually really like the textbooks chapter on this. I think that they talk a lot about the child development part. In my past experience with you guys as a class, and then other classes as well, who are taking 115, 155, so are wanting to be directors, management, mentor teachers, and that. You guys know why we need to involve them. So when we do kind of child development majors groups at Palomar, you guys know that you need to have a partnership. You know you need to work with families, and you know why. Maybe you don't have teachers that understand it. So as you're becoming a director, maybe you don't have a teacher that buys into that. And so that's why I like the textbook. They give the reasons why for you. They talk about Uri Bronfenbrenner and the ecological model. They talk about educational value that parents can get out of being involved in programs and things like that. And they also do talk about marketing as well and keeping working relationships, talking about that type of stuff. So I do actually really like the textbooks example. So that's something that you'll definitely want to look at as well. So it's an unusual relationship that you have with these families, because most of our families we really like. They're really nice people. Their kids are awesome. We meet them every single day. We greet them every single day. We typically know a lot about their life. Like they share with us, or we just get to know by working with their families who's just had a new baby in their house, whose grandparent came back, who's under some stress. Children are very transparent. They let us know about these things, and so we have to involve the parents. So because we get so close to them, it can be difficult, and I've suffered from this many times myself, is not having those boundaries and parameters set up. Especially when I was a younger teacher, I was, as soon as I got my 12 units, actually, before I got my 12 units, I was put in charge of my own classroom at 19 years old. Didn't know anything. I didn't know anything about child development, and I certainly didn't know anything about working with parents. And unfortunately, my director did, but she didn't share a lot of that information. She wasn't very hands-on. And so I didn't learn from seeing another person in the classroom, because it was just me and my 12 3-year-olds. And then I also didn't see it from somebody else. And so I was very young, and so I really struggled with boundaries. I got overly involved in some people's lives, and I definitely suffered the consequences. And so since that time, I think it's been really important that as kind as I am, as loving as I am, that I'll give you a hug, that type of stuff. And at the end of the day, I'm very aware of the fact that I am providing an economic service for you. I am providing childcare so you can go to work, or you can go to school so that you can achieve the goals and the dreams that you have. So you're paying me in order to do that. So it's an economic service that I provide for you, and so I need to be really aware of that. It became more so when I became a director, and I had to make sure that my teachers were providing this. So I felt a lot more responsibility, and that I had all of these children who were depending on me in order to have the best educational experience for them. And so as a director, I was always pretty good about boundaries and stuff like that. That wasn't to say that I wasn't understanding, or I couldn't work with somebody on late payments, or I couldn't help a family that was in stress, or anything like that. It just meant that I needed to navigate working relationships, form a close partnership with the family, while also keeping my boundaries. And so that is going to look different depending on the center that you run and how you are as a personality. I can't tell you what your boundary is. You are going to have to understand and set those boundaries yourself as an organization and as a person yourself. And then you're also going to need to communicate that to your staff as well. I do really like NIAC. They have a really, I've been in the NIAC accredited centers, and I've been in non-NIAC accredited centers. I do like a lot of the things that they do say about ethics and ethical standards, and I think part of that is the reciprocal relationship with families. And I like that it's reciprocal. It's a two-way street. It's mutual. So both parties have to have mutual respect, cooperation, and shared responsibility. I would probably put this in my parent handbook at some point. I would literally quote it and say that it's NIAC, because I do think that they perfectly sum up the fact that it's a two-way street, that the parent has to show me respect and cooperation and have responsibility for their child and how their child acts at some point. And I have to have respect and cooperation for the family, and I have responsibility in the educational experience that I provide for the child. So I really like that type of thing. And the textbook, once again, has great information for management and staff on how to set up a program that respects and strengthens families. So if you have staff members that you really want to go over with them, this would be that's a good chapter. Okay, so how do you kind of set families up with your program? So I talked a little bit about Tom Copeland last week. He's kind of the family child care FCC guru. He's got all of your policies and ebooks and blogs and stuff like that. So in his type of thing, we're really talking about the contract. That was his biggest thing. It's a legal contract. I provide child care and you can pay me this amount of money. But what do? They first come in. Are you going to have a tour? Are you going to have a pre-enrollment visit? How do you set that up? Is it just come in and I'll tour whenever? Do you do it Tuesdays at noon? How do you kind of handle that? And that's another personal decision that you do based on your program and how much you have to do. Is it you and your assistant director? Is it you and a mentor teacher? How do you do that? Then the contract, we talked about the steps of the contract with Tom Copeland, setting up that business working relationship really well from the beginning. And then how do you take your policies and procedures and how do you explain that to your family? You need to have some kind of handbook orientation with them. So in 150, the class that's done in the fall, you actually make a parent handbook. So you actually design a book that has to do with our health and safety policies. This is our exclusion policy. This is when payments are due, when they're not due, how we expect you to be involved, how we expect you to act in the classroom. All those types of things need to be in some kind of handbook. And then you need to have some kind of orientation. I hate to just give parents that type of stuff. I mean, sometimes you don't have an hour and a half to sit down and talk to them about it, but you do need to have some kind of conversation about the big things, like when can your child come to school if they're sick or not sick. And then also like how you expect them to act, the child and the parent in the classroom. So typically doing that in some kind of orientation, and then also having some kind of signed form other than the contract that says that they received the handbook, they know the information, they didn't have any questions, or if they did have questions, they have the opportunity to ask them. This is really going to help you when you are having difficult questions, difficult conversations with parents, that you can say, well, we told you about the health policy. We told you if your child was over 101, they couldn't come down unless they had been 24 hours to be removed. That's mostly a lot of your difficult questions, is that exclusion policy and, but I need to go to work. But I need to keep the health and safety of my program really intact, so your child can't come to school because they're vomiting. So knowing that and showing them, look, you signed this parent handbook. In the parent handbook is our exclusion policy. You knew about this. I can give you the name of a sick care program or an FCC provider who takes sick kids, something like that. I can give that to you, but I cannot accept your child into taking fever or diarrhea or vomiting free for 24 hours. So that's why it's really important, is that you've gone over those major points and the families don't have any questions about that. Well, if they don't have, they have had questions, you've answered those questions. Okay, so teacher-family relationships. So I'm going to talk more about the teacher-management relationship, but right now I'm going to talk about you as management supporting the teacher-family relationships. So I kind of we now have ideas of brands and being on brand. Nike's a brand, Starbucks a brand. They have corporate measures and parameters and things like that, and images and things like that that mean they're on brand. I'm going to talk a little bit about us being on brand, but I don't mean it in that superficial way of you have the Starbucks icon or something like that. I mean it more in the sense that you have set a mission statement or an idea of how you want your program to run. It's Reggio. It's built on mutual cooperation and respect, whatever it is that you decided for your program. The handbook talks about it in very clear statements for the families, and then it's also echoed in the classroom. So your staff needs to buy into this idea of your program, and they need to support what's going on in the handbook. So if your exclusion policy is nothing over 101, but the teacher is letting an obviously sick child into the classroom, that doesn't support it in the actions. So you can talk the talk, but are your staff walking the walk? Are they letting children sick in? Are they letting parents get away with bad behavior? Are they engaging in, relationships and conversations with parents that I would think would be inappropriate? So you need to have a message, you need to have an on-brand idea of what your program is like, and you need to have the staff buy into that, and then as much as they can on a daily basis, echo that and support that in the classroom, because it doesn't mean anything. Your policy means nothing if it's not enforced, and your policy means nothing if the teachers don't buy into it. So the professionalism of our families, of our staff members, is really kind of echoed throughout all the interactions that the family has. So they come into the center and they see a professionally run program with policies and handbooks, and then the teachers know what that is and they're willing to support it as well. Easily said than done. That can be really difficult to do, especially if you don't have staff that buys into it. And then that's why we look at our hiring and firing procedures. If they are unwilling to support the mission statement of the program, don't hire them in the first place, and you might need to work on a plan of action, or maybe not have them work at your center if they're unwilling to enforce the more important policies. Then also looking at teacher and family relationships when it comes to involving the families in communication. So we have all the day-to-day communication. Verbal is the most important. How you greet families, how you talk to families, how polite and professional you are with them. But we do know that there's written as well. It's fantastic now that we have like Remind, we have Bright Wheel, Seesaw, all of those types of apps in the classroom. Fantastic way to keep families apprised. Some people are old school. They literally write everything down on a piece of paper that the families take home with them. Some families have weekly emails, daily emails, newsletters, and bulletin boards go out in email form. There's a wide variety now that technology has changed in the classroom in the ways that we can in a written form communicate with our families. So this is your job as the leader to have that management vision. So do you want to keep it old school? That's fantastic. Say hi and write a note. Or do you want to use an app? Do you want to do an email? It really depends on you. There is no right or wrong as long as you have quality day-to-day communication, which keeps the parents abreast of what's going on. Communication of negative aspects, or negative, I mean biting, hitting, things like that, chronic accidents, things like that, either the child is engaging in that might be disruptive to the classroom, or inappropriate parents who are doing things that they shouldn't in the classroom as well. So how do you communicate those negative aspects? This is also something that's going to be a little bit more top down. How do you want to be kept abreast of this type of stuff? Do you not care about this type of stuff? Do you have complete confidence in your teachers that they can handle it? Or do you want to know? Like, I don't need to know every hit or slap, but if somebody's a chronic biter, I might want to be involved. I might want to buy more trucks if they're always fighting about trucks. I might need to move somebody out of a primary group or a classroom or something like that. How do you want to know about the more negative aspects of child behavior and parent behavior as well? And that's also something that you're going to set the tone of in the classroom by talking with the families, talking with the parents, things like that. That's how you're going to communicate that with your staff, how you want to be notified about those types of things. Okay, so support for families. This is something what I'm seeing a generational change in. My parents had some involvement in preschool, but it's definitely not where it was. I had a friend, she grew up in Solana Beach, and she lived about a quarter mile away from the school, no, less than a quarter mile. Let's say like 7 or 8 blocks on non-sidewalk residential area in Solana Beach, kind of near the actual beach. And she went to preschool one day, and then she decided she didn't want to be in preschool anymore. And this was like 85, something like that. So she literally walked home, got to her house, let herself in, turned on Sesame Street, and was watching in Sesame Street. Her dad went to pick her up at preschool, and she's not there. Everybody kind of searched. He luckily went home. He saw her. He called the school. Everybody had a good laugh about Holly. She's so funny. She went home. That would never happen. Like, if that happened, the cops would be called. There would be an investigation. Child Protective Services, community care licensing would come out. People would be fired. it's a completely different, in 35 to 40 years, we have completely flipped the script on preschools, daycares, in-home daycare, all that type of stuff, at before and after school care, all that type of stuff has really changed. And I think for the better. I mean, as funny as that is that she literally walked herself home to watch Sesame Street, and then she knew what time Sesame Street was on. As funny as that is, that would be a disaster right now. That would be an unsafe child who walked home. There were no sidewalks. Our kids probably wouldn't, if they left school, probably wouldn't even know how to get home. So society has changed, and that's something that's changed. And then support for families. You know, there weren't parent groups. There weren't parent advisement groups. PTO was not that big in the school districts. All this type of stuff wasn't around 30 to 40 years ago. So we're seeing generational shifts. Myself as a parent, I like this type of things. Last night I was at a school district meeting until 8 o'clock talking about, school safety, talking about achievement standards and testing and things like that in the school district. So we're much more involved, and it was a packed standing room only in this multi-purpose room in an elementary school. So we're seeing that our families want a little bit more, and we're also seeing that we're more aware of mental health issues, stressors, societal issues, that social services, we're more apt to get them involved. We're more apt to have a network of people that are there to support vulnerable or at-risk families. So we are needed to provide more support for families. How you do that, once again, is a really individual one. Some of you have mandates from the state or the federal government about how you do parent education and involve parents in your program, and you need to follow those standards. Some of you, it might be something that you want. You want to have a social service behavioral support PTO group that's wraparound that really supports your program, and some of you might not want to have that. Maybe you just want to have a part-time preschool in a church, and then maybe, a couple parties a year. You really, as a group, as an individual, and then the mandates that you have, need to make that decision for yourself and for your own program and what works best for the program that you run. Then another thing is, how do we let the parents know about how their children are doing in conferences and meetings, and then parent groups as a whole as well. So conferences and meetings are typically, conferences usually have 1 to 2 times a year, and that talks about kind of the achievement that your child has gone into, strengths and vulnerabilities, things like that. Typically we have meetings as we need to if we're having issues with a child's behavior or something like that. And then parent groups as a whole. Sometimes you'll have to take the information that you have about children and give it to a whole group about your program, what your program's doing, what your achievement scores are, and things like that. And then you might also have parent groups to talk about assessments that you want them to do. So you've assessed the child, now you're assessing the parent as a whole, like doing the ASQ, the ages and stages, in order to socially and emotionally support your family. So there's a lot of different aspects that this can take, but it's a way to strengthen the teacher-family relationship and the family unit as well. So how do we as management support parent-family relationships? So how do we support professional parents? How do we support professionalism in our, because I wrote this wrong. So it should be, how does management support staff-family relationships? I'm sorry, that is a typo. So how do we support professionalism in our staff, and how can we support our staff in supporting families? It really comes down to like that open and reciprocal communication back and forth. So sometimes it is top and down. I have a policy, an exclusion policy. I'm giving it to all my staff, and I'm going to enforce it. It is really important that you know that you have to do a daily health check, and then you know when you have to exclude a child. It's a difficult decision. Nobody wants to send a child home for being sick, but I don't want to be sick. I'm fighting something right now. The children don't want to be sick, and the staff doesn't want to be sick. So you have to write and enforce those policies. And as management, you have to be in the classroom. You have to see if they're enforcing them or not in order to make sure that they are being done. Then bottom up as well, I think, is really important. So what is our staff and our teachers telling us about what families need? So do teachers need more support programs? Do they need like incredible years to come in and do social and emotional care with children? Are families really stressed right now? Do we have a lot of mental health issues, or are we in a vulnerable population, in a vulnerable part of the county, and we need additional support? What do teachers say about families? And this is a little bit more of like the wraparound services and things like that? Or are they saying specific things? This child needs speech therapy. This child needs physical therapy. So it's a reciprocal. I'm telling you the things that you absolutely have to do, and you're telling me what do the families need. And that's kind of how I support the staff-family relationships. Management is going to be, your relationship with the family is going to be different and depend on the needs of the family, the structure of the program, and the personality of the director. So I talked about it before, and that it's going to be very individual for you. Maybe you are not fuzzy, warm type person. You're not going to be the hugger or anything like that. That's totally fine. Maybe you are the hugger, and that's totally fine. You just need to find the best way for yourself to set up a working relationship depending on what your staff needs from you, what the teachers need from you, what the children need from you, the families need from you, and what you can do as your own personality. So it's not something where I can give you like, this is what you should do to set up a relationship. It's really, really personal. And I think for a lot of us as women, sometimes our boundaries and our self-care in this area can be difficult. So it's a lot of times something you have to learn. In my case, being 19 and doing it the wrong way and not having boundaries and realizing that didn't serve the children, it didn't serve the family, and it didn't serve me as a person as well. So it's something that you're going to have to find out, and you're going to negotiate on your own depending on the program and the person that you are. I think the biggest thing, even if you are maybe not a fuzzy-wuzzy, hands-on, hugger type person, you still have to have face time with the families. Families want to see you. So even if you have a lot of work to do, they want to see management and they want to feel like they can talk to you whenever. They're not going to bring up their issues when they're small if they feel like you're unapproachable, or that you just sit in your office all day, or you're just in the front answering phones, whatever it is that you feel like you're doing a lot of. You really need to walk through at pickup and drop off times when there are a lot of families. They see you, you know the children by name, you know who you are, you know the children that maybe are having a more difficult time, and you're working on them, and you're aware of the challenges that are happening in the classroom. A daily walkthrough will allow you also to monitor things that are happening in the classroom. We're going to talk more about supervision itself next week, but it's going to allow you to monitor the teacher and family relationships. If you have a teacher that is getting overly involved with the families, or is really hands-off and isn't talking to them and doing that in daily communication, it's a really fine balance between in that working relationship. It's a really, really fine balance. And like I said, at 19, I didn't have another person in my classroom, and I didn't have a director that was really hands-on or had FaceTime in the classroom. So I just had to make it up myself. And so I learned kind of the hard way. But you can monitor this and you can stay on brand. So if your thing is that you're warm and fun, but you have these strict boundaries about you can't be Facebook friends, or whatever it is that you have these boundaries with, in the classroom, you'll be able to monitor it. Anticipating problems as well, either with difficult families or challenging children, identifying them and anticipating problems that you might have, or just physical problems in the classroom. Like, the rug keeps flipping up and people keep falling, and you need to order a new rug. Something like that you can anticipate before it becomes a bigger issue. And then identifying areas that teachers need to be trained in. Do we need to do more about hand washing with the families when they come in, or do we need to train the teachers more on appropriate sanitation, or whatever it is? By being in the classroom, you're able to monitor these things and support the families in keeping consistent policies in the classroom, so staying kind of on brand. Then home support as well. So I am a home visitor. I'm an early interventionist for the county doing that kind of therapy. So I do probably have a bias in that I think home visiting can be really important if you can set it up in your program. So down in San Diego, this is not my group at all, but the San Diego Unified has a small under 3 program that does therapy, and part of it is like every other Friday. I think the schools shut down, and the teachers go out and they visit with the families on those days. So some people have the ability to have some visitors, like Head Start. It can be difficult to start. It can be difficult to manage. So there are issues with it, and it would take a lot. It would take a big jump in order to implement this brand new in a program that didn't have it before. But I think there are a lot of advantages to it. If you can't do that, home activities, I've done that before. So all like when we were working on threading with toddlers, we noticed that our toddlers were not, like our 2s and 3s were not able to like thread beads and stuff like that. So we got a bunch of pipe cleaners and penne pasta and just sent home little baggies and then like a little note about like threading is a fine motor skill and this is how you can support it at home, things like that. It costs like, I think to send out like 100 baggies cost me like $7.50. Like, I mean, I literally had to buy Ziploc bags, penne pasta, and pipe cleaners. That was literally all it took. And then I guess this cost of paper as well, to send out all of those types of things. But it was a way that we were supporting that. Then also in centers, I've had family resource centers. So we have kind of a curated library of things that you can sign up. So you want to know more about positive discipline. Here are some extra positive discipline books that we have, or the new baby kit that you can get from First Five. They came every month and they restocked it. We gave it to anybody who had a baby, or, oh, your neighbor has a new baby, here, take this, you know, something like that. So a way that we can support the family. Then there's lending libraries as well that are not as curated. So it's what families bring in, what other, like more of like a community or free library. You know, you might want to do that as well. I do like the idea of it being more curated and not like, I had one, but we vaccinate, you know, that's the law now, vaccinations, and somebody brought in like an anti-vaccination book. Well, I didn't really want that to go out because that's not supporting the message that I have, which is your child needs to be vaccinated to be in childcare. So I kind of removed that and returned it back to the family and, you know, said, you know, while I respect your personal beliefs, your child is vaccinated in order to come to our center. And, you know, if you want to do that on your own time, it's not really something that I feel like I can support and that all of our families need to be vaccinated here. So that's an example, like, so you can have lending libraries that literally, like, they're outside, they're in a, you know, in like a little alcove or something like that, that people just bring a variety of different things, or you can have more of a family resource center library that's more curated. It might have resources more provided for you. So that will be a personal decision as well. Then many programs are mandated to provide parent education classes or have a parent involvement group. Parent involvement groups like raise money, or they set up programs for like a PTO, PTA that supports the program. And then you might also have to provide educational classes as well. And I think part of this is that sometimes you want to have fun. You want to support the families by having graduation or a winter holidays thing before you go on break, something like this. So I did want to talk about this. If you're in my 150, you've seen this before, but in the school year when I was doing parent education programs at a school district, it was mandated in our program that we had to provide monthly parent education for our families. So when we first all came back to school, art and creativity, hands-on, we did like melting crayons with iron, like we did all kinds of super fun types of things. I talked it up a lot, and then when they came, they like had a make and take that they could take away. They had little bottles of paint and like little bottles that we gave them so that they could do it at home. So it was like super fun. It was my most expensive one, but it was like, this is fun. You want to come to this every single month, I promise. Then October, one time it was fantastic. We had somebody from Walgreens come out and do free health flu shots for everybody. We talked about health and wellness, eating right, getting enough sleep, all that type of stuff. And then we talked about our health policy, our exclusion policy, safety policy, what we were doing on our end, and then how parents could support health and wellness before we all started getting sick in flu season. November, STEM, science, technology, engineering, math, once again, hands-on, fun, talking about how children learn in an area that can sometimes be a little bit more of a last thought. December, we had a winter celebration, super fun. One year we did, we made little snow globes, so all the families that had little kids, they donated all of the baby food jars, painted them, painted the tops, put water and glitter in, and then we had the families gluing like penguins and like polar scenes and stuff like that. So they had a little make and take that they all got to take a snow globe away. January, new relationships, new year, positive behavior, working with your families, being really, you know, teaching them what is positive behavior, what is positive reinforcement, and then how do we use that in the classroom. February, social emotional development, encouraging friendship. It's it is Valentine's Day. How do we encourage friendship in the classroom. Maybe talking about bullying with the older ones. March, usually need to do like an ASQ or something like that, re-enrollment, something like blah, that you kind of just have to do, and you have all your parents or most of your parents contained in one sense area. If you have to do an assessment with them, do it with them, show them. Like a lot of times people will think, oh yeah, my child throws a ball, where I'm thinking like throws a ball and they're thinking throw a ball. And it's like a different kind of, what they think and what I think are totally different. So I show them and I explain to them what the question is actually asking. And then maybe you have to do re-enrollment for the next year, or you want everybody to sign their emergency contacts again or something like that. April, responsible media, tech use, why we have a Facebook page, why we don't have a Facebook page, why we ask you not to Facebook friend your teacher, you know, things like that. And then May, summer fun, barbecue, let's end the summer with a bang, everybody having fun, another expensive one, but just kind of having fun with your families, saying thank you for being so great throughout the school year. I think having fun is important. So this is something I did in 150, but talking about parent workshops. It's important to have a snack or refreshments. Childcare is provided, so typically you have an aide off to the side in the classroom, having quiet, easy activities. I wouldn't be opposed to a movie in this kind of sense, an educational movie, but I wouldn't be opposed to it. So you are letting the family know you're not giving up supervision, but somebody is helping so that you can kind of focus on what I'm talking about. Welcome the families, honor that they took time out of their lives to come back to school or to stay after school in order to do this with me, introduce myself, do my main points. So I was talking about responsible media use. That's something that people have always said that they're really interested in. What should my child be watching? What should they not be watching? How much time should they spend? Having them work as a group, doing an activity around anything that you're talking about. Parents love hands-on. They love to do something with their child or not with their child, with an adult, something like that. But this is typically after work hours. They've spent all day doing something, so having it be a little bit more fun and hands-on is really helpful. And then coming back together and giving them a resource or a make and take or a handout or a pamphlet or like the penne pasta thing that's supported by motor skills, something that they can do or use at home in order to support what you just told them. So I did that kind of fast. If you do 150, you'll do more about that with whoever is teaching it. Marketing and working with the community as well. I wanted to talk to that. So marketing really is, like a lot of times, I don't want to dwell on the idea of brand, because I think brand in childcare it's not just the image, it's not just what it looks like, it's the more deeper things in that everybody supports and buys into this idea of the education, and they support it in all levels of your program. And so marketing as well is how do you communicate the education that you provide for children to the wider community. So I do like this. This is from an actual marketing book that I bought, and it's talking about buyer expectations, satisfying customer preferences, and creating and maintaining relationships with customers and keeping suppliers happy. And I think that we do a lot of that type of thing. It needs to match buyer expectations. If you are academic and somebody wants Reggio or vice versa, they're not going to be happy. They're going to have expectations that you can never fulfill because there's a mismatch in what they want and what you're providing. So at the very beginning, letting them know what kind of program you have, so that they can either choose to be in your program or they can choose to go to another program that's going to fulfill what they want. Satisfying customer preferences, that their child is healthy, safe, and learning every day while they are at work or at school. Then creating and maintaining relationships with customers, keeping those boundaries in order to keep our customers happy. So we market our organization with the philosophy of education that we've picked and we've based our program on. And that's a lot of the expectations and the keeping the customers happy. And then also, I think when we're talking about it, you need to really be aware of what your physical location is saying. I know that a lot of family childcare don't advertise. They're in a house. They don't have a big sign. Some of them do, but a lot of them don't, because they want to provide for like safety reasons and stuff like that. They don't want people knowing that they have a bunch of like 2-year-olds in their backyard. You know, it's more online or word of mouth with FCC. But most programs that are in a center have some kind of signage. You need to make sure that There's a clearly labeled front door. You can walk through the door. When you come in, it's clean and inviting. You're using your 5 senses. It doesn't smell like poopy diapers. The floor isn't dirty. Children aren't screaming all the time. I mean, some of those things are going to happen, but for the most part, it's clean and it's welcoming and it's inviting. Everything looks clean and in good repair. It's part of how we kind of present ourselves. It's our outside facade telling you that this is not only a safe place, it's a healthy place, and it's a place that likes children. So, and you typically are showing safety with gates and alarms, things like that as well. Also, in our marketing and our physical location, when somebody drops by, they see that you are a center, or they've heard good things about you, they either will walk in and somebody is there to greet them. So maybe you don't have a designated administration person, or you stepped out for lunch, but there's a teacher that has a brochure, knows where the brochures is, and can talk generally, or has the customer service ability to say, hi, yes, welcome to so-and-so school. Here is the information that you need in order to possibly call us for a tour or engage in our enrollment procedures, something like that. This establishes like a really professional connection right from the beginning. So the director either needs to do this, the assistant director, or the teacher that is on site when those people aren't there. They know enough about the administration, they know enough about customer service in order to handle this for you. Your online presence as well echoes this. So a lot of times it's great to have like an online contact program that goes to an email that you can respond to like in business hours. So if somebody, a lot of times for people that don't feel comfortable calling on the phone or going in person, they can say, hi, what is your part day preschool look like? And they can have that kind of information online. The bare minimum, if you don't have a website, you should have some kind of Facebook page or a simple website or a Google Drive, Google Docs, something like that, that advertises your school. It is your virtual storefront, and it enables families to see basic information, when you're open, what your mission statement is, the education, thing like that. So if I'm looking for a GO and I see that you're academic, I'm going to be like, nope, thanks, I'm not even going to contact you. That's going to manage expectations from the beginning. But maybe it says, oh, you do part-time. I need part-time. Awesome. I'm going to email you, or I'm going to call you and set something up. Color pictures, videos, you know, it's either from your school program if the parents consent to having their child's photo on social media or online, or you just get Creative Commons stock photo, you know, you literally look up like child and family, anything like that that is kind of enticing and sets parents up for the idea that this is a fun place for their child to be. And then making sure as well that anything you write online is spelled correctly and it's grammatically correct. I see that quite a bit. I am not always the best. I made a typo in this PowerPoint. I'm going to go back and check it in a little bit. But if this was going to be on a brochure or a website, I would have 57 people look at it before it goes out there for other people to see, so that it makes a lot of sense. So at the bare minimum, we're really an online world now. So if you are struggling with enrollment and you don't have an online presence, definitely think about having a really basic Facebook page or something like that. Because even if you don't have a Facebook page, somebody might talk about you on Yelp. So you need to be aware that we now live in an online or virtual world. When it comes to your online presence and managing it, you need to decide about social media yourself. I've never had a social media site. I always had a website, or a website within my, like if I was Head Start, there's Head Start, and then it talks about my center, or it has my hours. Like Educational Enrichment Services, if you go to their website, it talks about their program. It's beautiful, and they have all of these pictures and things like that. And then if you wanted to know about Beaubier School, it says, you know, contact this person about that, or about enrollment or something like that. So each school, Beaubier or Melrose or whatever, doesn't have their own, or at least they did not used to have their own page in the website, but they had information about it. So that's typically what I've done. I've never had social media sites. I'm a little bit older. I didn't grow up with social media. I have no personal social media of my own. I don't like it. So I have a particular bias when it comes to that, but I have seen FCC providers and centers that use Instagram, Facebook, and Snapchat beautifully. They have amazing pictures. They get a lot of interest from it. They handle it really well. The parents are on board. So it can be done, and I can see the value of it, definitely, but I choose not to do that. I choose to do it through a website. incredibly personal decision once again. How do you want to manage social media and your online presence? And how do you want to recommend to your staff that they use social media as well? So the biggest thing, though, is to have written consent. So if you are taking pictures of children that are in some way going to be online, then the parents need to have that information known to them, and they need to sign off, and it needs to be explicit. Like, it's not like a vague type of thing. Like, typically you have a checklist, like you can use my children's picture in the classroom or on social media or on the web, like typically like that, but it needs to really be spelled out for them, because it would be terrible if your child was splashed all over a site online and you had not consented to it. That could be a real sticky situation with the family. But you need to figure out how you're going to use social media, how you're going to expect your teachers to use it in the classroom, and then also how you kind of recommend that they use it outside of the classroom. So when I was doing this, I really kind of cautioned teachers. So we didn't have a social media at one site at all. We had an online website, and then I cautioned them against being online friends with the families, especially if they had like a private profile where they shared a lot about their families or were just blowing off steam or something like that. Then you might want to think about, if your parent now sees your private profile and they see more about you, how is that going to change your relationship in the classroom? So I couldn't tell them not to do that, but I would tell them the possible downsides with having social media contact with families outside of our school hours. But that's just me. Again, some people I know can handle those really well. They are friends with families on Instagram or Facebook, and it goes really, really well. I have my own particular bias, probably based on my age. But for programs that are not online, you need to know that you are most likely having a profile made about you on Yelp, Great Schools, or Savvy Source, or something like that. So it can happen even if you don't have a Facebook page, you don't have a basic website, you might have a Yelp profile. Sometimes it's angry parents, and sometimes it's parents who love you that want the greater community to know about you. So if parents love you, that's fantastic. That's great. You don't need to worry about what happens if you get a negative review though. So somebody is upset, they've left the program, they didn't get into the program, for whatever reason they are now disgruntled. There's a couple things that you can do. You can reply publicly to that person and offer to resolve it. Like, hi, Jean, I'm so sorry that you were upset about blah, blah, blah. If you could, I'm going to contact you tomorrow, or if you could contact me so that we can resolve this. Or you can publicly dispute the account. So let's say that you feel like the parent is making outrageous claims, or they are being untruthful about what actually happened. You can say, I'm so sorry that you feel this way, but that is not how I remember it. You can publicly dispute the account. There are negatives and positives to both of these types of things, or you can just ignore it. It's totally up to you. There are consequences, and there are positives of disputing, talking to them, or ignoring it, and you're really going to have to decide based on the specific kind of incident that happened. I think for the most part it doesn't happen, but I can see this as we're kind of outside of millennials. A lot of our families are millennials, but now we have like Generation Y, people that were born completely in the new century or whatever it is that we're now calling it, who are now starting to be young parents. How are people that were completely raised online or with smartphones and things like that, how are they negotiating with education, and how are they working within like online spheres when it relates to education? That's a change that we're all going to have to face. So you also might want to rethink your interactions with the parent, with this generation that we now have. How do we change our behavior to help families like that, to better meet the needs of families like that? I teach at Cal State as well, and I kind of really like that because it's a younger crowd as well. I love Palomar as well, but I kind of like the mix of like my Child Development 100s, which are younger, and then some of my Cal State classes that are like 18 or 19 years old, because as somebody who's closer to 40, much closer to 40 than I am to 19 or 20, they can tell me things that are changing that I might not know about, or like social media changes or online changes. Like, I didn't know what Bitcoins were last summer. So I asked some of my students, and they were able to like explain this whole phenomenon that I had never heard of before. So they are helping me make this generational leap into something that I'm less familiar of, but I can meet the needs of my families who are now more online. So hopefully, even if you got a negative review, you could think more about it. I talked a little bit about this, about staff use of technology and social media. So it's an individual decision. Some of you have those secure apps like Brightwheel or Seesaw for academic communication, or you have your teachers post class pictures on your Facebook or Instagram page when the parents consent. It really depends on you and what you've set up for your program and what your kind of brand is. Once again, how do you communicate with families on social media, or do you not do it at all? If you have a phone or an iPad in class for work, how do you maintain professional boundaries? If you're allowed to text families, that type of stuff, how do you supervise and maintain that communication now that our smart devices are more in the classroom? So I'm just going to give you an example. So in my programs, personal phones were off and in their bag on vibrate, and they were to be like, my staff members were to be connected through the staff school phone. So if their child was sick, it came to me. I got the staff member out, and they went home to take care of their child. An iPad was used in the school and in the classroom, but it only had approved apps, and it was locked. So they could only use Brightwheel, or they could only use the DRDP or whatever it was. And it was typically for when they were not supervising children. So while they could update the DRDP somewhat, it was more after school or during nap time that they were expected to use that. We had like a no screen, like we didn't watch movies. The children had a computer, but it was down. It was like an actual desktop that the children could use. They didn't use smart devices, at least at that particular school, while I have seen Chromebooks used really well in the school district already. So social media and technology and staff meetings, I cautioned against accepting personal social media requests from families until after the teaching relationship was done. And I talked about some of the potential issues with boundaries and things like that that might come apart, but they were not told that they couldn't, but I definitely cautioned against it. And I also talked about responsible social media use, and that, you know, in 2005, I joined Facebook because I was still in college. And so, you know, at that point, we didn't know that it would last forever, that, you know, the picture of me with a red Solo cup is always going to be online somewhere. I stopped Facebook in 2010. I haven't been on since, but that picture is still somewhere on the internet floating away. And so letting them know that, you know, what happens online can happen forever. And so that is kind of a weighty thing to think about. Also with marketing is like rewards. It's a way to get enrollment in interest. So refer a friend, you get 50% off next month's tuition. If you bring a sibling in, you get, you know, 10% off each month, you know, something like that. If you are doing this, though, consider that it's something that's got to be included in your budget, because even if it is nominal, it's 5–10%, it's $50 here, 50% that. It's not normal income it's not income that you're no longer bringing in. It's something that has to be budgeted for as well. Then the last thing is, what does community care say about marketing as well? And it's really just that you have to have your licensing number on any kind of communications that you have. So you have to have your facility license number. So if you have a brochure, if it's in a commercial, online as well, it needs to have your license number included in that information as well. All right, so a lot of this is from 150, so I apologize if you have heard this before, but a lot of you, some of you want to have a program that literally just provides education. Maybe you don't have an education parent education component. It's just education, and that's fantastic. Some of you have emailed me in the past wanting to know more about starting at-risk programs or wraparound services or support services. How do you set up that type of thing for your school or for your community? So how do you network and connect your program with the larger world? Do you even want to do that? If you don't want to do it, then this is going to be less interest to you. But if this is important to you, I'm going to talk a little bit about that type of thing. So, so an example would be, I want to run a program for at-risk youth after school. So I want to do a before and after school program. I already run a program, but I want to increase the state-funded eligibility that I receive, and I also want to market more to underserved youth that maybe are not going to the Boys and Girls Club or the school district's programs. So what I need in order to do this is partnership with gang programs. I need to talk to already established after-school programs. I need to have a good working relationship with the elementary school. On the larger level, the principal, the superintendent, I need to go to those district meetings in order to meet those people. I need to have eligibility coordinators or somebody who can help me with the intricacies of getting state funded. I need to talk to an at-risk preschool. So if a preschool serves underserved populations, as those children grow older, maybe they could recommend that they come to my program, or they could have my number given to them. I need to have a partnership with the police department as well, either with their homeless outreach or their gang program, something like that. Maybe talking with homeless shelters as well, that could be underserved youth as well. So these are all the type of people that I would need to have partnerships with. How do you do that? Like, that's huge. Like, I'm just like, I mean, that would be your full-time job, doing all of that type of stuff. The biggest thing to do is to have an action plan, and I have an example on Canvas for you. So if this is an area that you are wanting to branch out, use more social services, have a bigger network, what you do is you, as with everything, a SMART goal, you have measurable and achievable first steps in working with the community. And I like what I have on Canvas is that it's part of an elementary school. This is somebody else's example. But how do you take those first steps? Who's going to work on it? When should it be due? That type of stuff. Typically, it's securing funding, writing letters to social services. Those are the big type of thing, is networking with social services or getting more money in order to provide better services. Second steps, talking in meetings with your classroom, with your management, obtaining support from staff, from parent groups, from support groups, from social service organizations. It also gives you specific guidelines for scheduling and implementation. So what do you need from families? What do you need from parents? What do you need staff in order to kind of achieve your goals? The biggest thing, though, is a network. And I know that a lot of people might not have a network. I think the biggest thing is that you need to identify social service agencies that can support you, and that you need to grow your professional network by talking to therapists, social service agency practitioners, early education specialists, elementary school staff, doctors, nurses, things like that. So when you go to community fairs, talking with people, getting to know them. If you know a family member at your program who runs a really interesting program, keeping their business card and maybe talking to them years down the road. Professional networks also include child development majors groups that we have every year at Palomar, taking more classes, taking classes in person, attending workshops on the weekend, going to conferences, reaching out to professors. Last semester, and then this semester as well, I talked to people who were in my class and who are not even in my class, who just wanted to talk to me about the things that I do, or was in my class last semester, but I just met with a couple weeks ago to talk about after-school programs and how she wants to make parent education more of a focus in her program. So that is ways that you can network. I think the biggest thing, and this is that last thing, is if you're invited to somewhere or you see an opportunity, go. Even if you're shy, maybe you're not like, hi, how are you? I'm Jolie, let's talk, something like that. Just going and hearing more and getting a business card and things like that is going to give you more information about the 90, as my 6-year-old would say, 9,700. In her world, that is the biggest number. There's no infinity, there's no 1 million, it's 9,700. So there's 9,700 social service agencies, groups, nonprofits, volunteers, all these types of things just in Oceanside that I can think of. So the more that you know about them, the more that you can use that in your network. So when you go somewhere, you go to a conference or workshop, a class, a majors group, anything like that, be polite, respectful, listen to what they have, collect their business cards. And then I typically take it and I have my business card, and then I tape it to a piece of paper like this, and then I write Jane Smith, blonde hair, works there as their enrollment coordinator, loves dogs, anything that I can think of. with like pertinent information about Jane Smith, about the organization that she runs. They give away free books, or this pediatrician volunteers with pregnant teens, you know, whatever it is. So then later on, I have a very messy file cabinet with stacks of these types of things. But I was looking for somebody to help me with something at a school district fundraiser, and I was able to find something from a pediatric dentist who provides like free or low care cost for some families. So it was like, oh, hey, and you know, emailed them, and they were able to come out and do something for a school district a while back. So that's kind of how you build it. But you can, it's also second reciprocal relationship again. I'm collecting what they can do for me, and then I'm highlighting my program. So I serve underserved youth. I do this. I get this kind of funding. These are my strengths. This is the role I play in my community. This is how you can come to me for what I kind of need. And then I think, like I said, the biggest thing is when you're invited, go. Years ago when I worked at Escondido, I kind of got signed up to go to a gang task force, but it was fantastic. I learned a ton about gangs and what was going on in Escondido. And then more recently, now that I'm working for Cal State, I just saw a random email about a clinic that they have where they have the student nurses working, and they serve about 1,000 people a year doing free to no cost care, typically for the homeless in North County. And they're doing it here at Cal State. And I thought, wow. And so I just emailed them, and I was like, I'm a developmental specialist. I work in early intervention. I also teach. Do you guys need me for anything? And they like called me within a day, and we have set up something. And so I'm going to be going to some of their fairs that they have, and I'm going to be trying to provide developmental services for some of the families that they have that they're serving. So if they're homeless and they're a family, then I can talk to them about the services that I know in North Carolina, why did I say that? In North County that might be helpful for them. So just going, doing, putting yourself out there is really the way that you grow your network. And I know that it can seem a little bit like a lot at this point, but all of the type of things that we are doing are to support our families. So I hope that you have learned something. I know a lot of it has been vague, because it depends on the program that you run. It depends on who you are as a manager and how you want your brand or how you want your school to function. It's really going to be a personal decision on what your program needs as far as working with parents, and what your program needs in telling parents what you expect from them. So I hope that today has been helpful, and I will see you guys more online. Thanks so much. I did want to mention, there's no more online assignments anymore. All of that time that you should have been spending on online assignments, you need to be spending on your group project. You have less than a month to go. The slides need to be finished. The handouts need to be finished. And once again, there's 2 parts to this online assignment, this group project. I mean, there is the actual group project, what everybody's going to see online in the second to last week of school. And then also the individual part of the group project, which is an personal overview. So you're talking about what you learned and what you did. So if you didn't do much, you're not going to do well on that part of it. So you could potentially even lose 50% if the group presentation happened, but you might get 50% of the points taken off in that maybe you didn't do anything with your group. So that is part of the grading, is what responsibility did you have with your group? How did you support them? What slides did you do? Did you help with this handout? Did you narrate it? That type of thing. And in that, I have group access either to your discussion boards or to your Google Slides or to your Google Docs. I've been seeing what everybody has been doing. So just be aware of the fact that your responsibility has increased. You have a lot of group project work that you need to work on. You need to work on it now, because I have taken away the online assignment part of this class. So that hour and a half that you are now spending on that, you need to be focusing on your group projects. So I will see you guys. Any emails or any questions about that, please email me.